Good morning, George Hepworth, Grover Park Consulting. In this video, I'm going to talk about optimizing access interfaces to pre-filter data when working with remote SQL Server, hosted SQL Server, or SQL Azure databases. Optimization is a multifaceted process. It can include everything from appropriate indexing on tables to network connectivity, fine-tuning connections, and there are some specific things you can do in an access interface to optimize performance. This video is focusing on one aspect of that overall multifaceted process. I'm going to emphasize implementing an interface to minimize the number of records your application has to move across the network from the remote database to the local interface. Before I start the presentation, though, I want to point out that I am definitely working with the remote hosted SQL Server database this time, which was not the case in the video which this one replaces. I had inadvertently left the connection to my development copy of this SQL Server database on my local computer and forgot to switch it back for the demo. So this time I've put a reminder to myself. The Lander Trail Foundation's mobile library is a catalog of the books in their collection. Name of the application is the mobile library. That's because this is one of two interfaces. The companion interface is actually written in Power Apps. It connects to the same hosted SQL Server database, and it runs on a smartphone, on a tablet, or in a browser, and that's the mobile aspect. We're looking at the access interface here. Let's look at books. I want to focus on the three controls at the top of the screen. In our follow-up video, we'll look more closely at the editing in the form itself. We have a classic cascading combo box design. We filter first by category, and then we have a list of all publications which fall in that category in our second combo box. In addition, because the number of records in a catalog could reach several thousand over time, I implemented a first letter search which should further filter down or limit the list of items in our publication selection combo box by the first letter of the first significant word in the publication's title. Significant words include everything except a, an, and the. Selecting one of the letters filters this list by the initial letter of the first significant word in the book title. I put two global filters here. The hash mark represents select no publications. This returns 0. As you can see here, currently there are no book records in the publications drop-down because we're filtering against the select nothing icon. The alternative, which is show all publications, uses the %, which is the wildcard in the SQL Server search. And because our search is being done on SQL Server, I used their wildcard. When we select all publications, this drop-down populates with all of the books currently in our catalog, which is a total of 1,929. Note that when I select none, it updates to show 0. What I want to emphasize is the performance we get when we select the all wildcard. It populated that combo box with 1,929 records. There is a brief flicker as the update occurs. That flicker represents the difference between local and remote in this application. The records in the row source for this combo box are retrieved by a pass-through query which runs a stored procedure in the SQL Server database. Selecting any given category, and I'll pick one here that I know has a number of books. That tells us that there are 45 books in our publication catalog which have been categorized under this Mormon History /Church. if I filter the list by the first letter of the first significant word, it returns 2, desert and diary. Nothing, and all of them. It returns all 45 for that category. This pre-filtering process means that we're always going to be selecting from, or we should always be selecting from, the smaller subset of available records rather than all 1,929 in a drop-down. The combination of filters on the category and the initial first letter limits the number of choices the user has to select from. Let's look at how this works. I've already switched to design view for the publications form. Let's begin with the row source for the category combo box. The query which populates it is a union query. The first part of the union returns the 0 as a genre ID and the all categories as the selection. And we have a sort order 0. This will always sort to the top above all of the other records. As you can see, that's how this query is sorted. The second half of the union query selects the genre or catalog. Originally, I started calling it a genre. Letter Trail Foundation preferred the word category. This technique is one I learned from fellow Access MVP Armin Stein. In order to indicate whether or not a current selection is active or inactive, we prefix it with some character. I use the asterisk to indicate that it's not a valid selection, even though it's retained in the lookup table. Or the sort order. For sort order, I prefix either a 1 or a 0 to the category or genre. With a 0, it will sort to the top. With a 1, it will sort below the 0, but then alphabetically for the rest of the categories. Quick look at how that works in practice. Zeros sort to the top. These are our active titles, active categories. Scroll to the bottom, you see the inactive categories and the 1 which sorts them to the end. I believe there is a total of 544, of which approximately 500 are currently active. Moving on, let's see how we apply a filter from category to the select publication combo box. This time we need to look at the after update event. It does two things. It rewrites the SQL of the query which populates the select publications combo box. It does that by calling a sub called filter pub titles and passing it 3 arguments. If we have selected a category, we pass the primary key for that category. If nothing has been selected, or if the user has selected 0 for all, we send in 0. The second argument determines whether or not we're going to show or hide all record. The logic here is if we have selected all categories in the combo box and the value of this temp var is our wildcard, then we're going to show everything. If either of these is false, if we have selected a non-zero category, a valid category, or if we have selected a non-wildcard alpha character, say ABC, or the hash mark to mean none, then we pass in the 0, which means show none. And the third argument is the value of the selected alpha character from our our alphabet list. I'll show you in a second how we get this temvar. Once we have rewritten the pass-through query, we re-query the select publication combo box to reflect whatever the row source for that rewritten pass-through query is. There's the pass-through query we just looked at. There's the new SQL. Execute this stored procedure using the currently selected category. That'll be either 0 or some valid category ID, a 0 or a 1 to indicate hide or show all records, and that temvar, which is the first character of the first significant word in the book's title. Once we have the SQL string, we replace the SQL inside that query def, drop back into the after update event, and perform the requery. That's all it is necessary to requery the records in our combo box. Note that we're always trying to return the smallest possible number of records. We're not bringing everything back and then applying a filter. We're only bringing back all of the records if the user has specifically said, I want to see all of the records. The next thing we have to look at is the alphabet list, which generates the value of this temvar. I want to start with the subform itself, so I'm going to minimize this window, close this form, open the alpha select. This little subform has 26 command buttons, one for each letter of the English alphabet. It also includes the wildcard and the no record command button. We use the caption from each of these controls to filter the publication titles in the select publication combo box. Each of these command buttons has a function in the on-click event. This technique requires a function, not a sub. You can call a particular function from the property sheet by putting equal the function name and any required arguments. In this case, the required argument is the caption from the active control, which is the one that has just been clicked. That caption is passed to this function. Let's go find that function. It's behind the alpha select subform, and it is a public function. It's called filter book list. It takes one argument, which is the caption from the control, which was just clicked. There are three parts to this function. The first part is control highlighting. It sets the value of a variable to the current control so we can get back to it when we need to. Then it sets the back color and fore color of all of the command buttons on that form to a uniform brown with white text. The next section finds the active control, which we identified here, and sets its back color to yellow with black text. This alerts the user which option has been selected. The next step takes the caption passed into the function and sets the value of this temvar to that caption. So now tempvar's alpha first character, first char, will contain the single letter or the wildcard or the no selection. The next step is to call the same sub we used previously to reset the value of the SQL string in our pass-through query. We pass the category, if any, whether or not we want to show all records or no records, and the currently selected wildcard or alpha character to filter the list by the first character in the initial word in each title. We requery that combo box. If it has previously had a selection, we set it back to 0. This clears and resets that combo combo box back to a baseline. This function then allows us to interact with the categories selected in the category combo box and the alpha characters selected in our alphabet list to filter or refilter the available records, or available titles in this combo box. We're not loading everything and applying a filter. We're loading everything only if the user specifically asked for everything. In all other cases, we're retrieving from the server the minimum number of records required to satisfy our selection. I will close this out, close this, not going to save anything, relaunch the main menu. Collapse, select the books, and run through one more time. Pay attention to the speed with which updates occur. If I select, let's say America, nothing happens in this combo box because we're still filtering by the Show No Publications option. If I show all publications, it immediately updates to show me that there are 4 publications in the category. And if we pick the letter E, it filters it to 3: essay, eminent, and exploring. A returns the other ancient man in North America. I want to emphasize that we are indeed pulling records from the remote SQL Server. Pass-through query, which does that. Filter pubs by genre. Has exec, filter pubs by genre, the category ID 0 to show none, and the first letter of the initial word in each publication title. I've blacked out the credentials here. See, this is a remote database running in the cloud on my WinHost account. And one more time, let's change this to E. I hope you have enjoyed or learned, or both, something from today's presentation. In the subsequent presentation, I will carry this forward to the next step, which is actually editing records in the form. Once we have selected the records, a group of records in our row source, the next step is to select one of those records for editing, and that will be the subtopic for the next presentation. If you like what you saw, hit the like button. Let me know that you like it. Subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for the next video. Thank you.